ever flipped through a family album and realized you weren't in it? Not even once. Not even in the moments you remember planning, cooking, cleaning for. They were all there. Her laugh, his arm around her. And me? I was behind the camera, beside the sink, just outside the frame. I used to tell myself that meant I was holding everything together. Now I wonder if I was just being a Raystone photo at a time. One afternoon, she pointed to a picture. "Who's that?" He smiled. "That's your mom." She nodded. No one corrected her. I didn't say a word, but I stopped stirring my tea. It had gone cold anyway. That night, I wrapped a picture frame. One photo on the front. Just them. One on the back. The three of us. I'd written all our names. But later, I found mine had been wiped clean. The day I knew for sure wasn't loud. No one confessed. No one cried. It was a Tuesday. I was folding towels. Elena had just left. She'd forgotten her scarf, the one with the tiny daisy print. I picked it up to put it in the laundry, and I heard the garage door open. My husband stepped in, saw the scarf in my hand, and froze. Just for a second. Then he smiled and said, "She loves that old thing, doesn't she?" I nodded. He walked away. But something stayed frozen. That wasn't the first time I suspected. Truth is, I'd felt it for years. I just never had the words for the shape of the ache. He was always kind to her, too kind. That kind of kindness that wrapped itself around her like protection. He showed up at her school plays, even the ones we weren't told about. He bought her favorite snacks, just in case she drops by. He carried a picture of her in his wallet. Not with our kids, just her. Once, I caught him humming a lullaby at the sink. I hadn't heard it in years. He used to sing it to our son, but when I stepped closer, he wasn't holding a dish. He was holding a drawing Elena's, from when she was little. "She left it in the car," he said. He didn't lie. He just didn't stop me from lying to myself. And Teresa. God, Teresa. She and I shared casseroles, car rides, Christmas gifts. We were supposed to grow old in rocking chairs on the same porch. She held my hand when my sister died. I braided her hair the night before her wedding, but she never told me. Once, when we were sorting old books for the church sale, she pulled out a baby photo of Elena. I said, "She had his chin, didn't she?" My voice was joking, light. She paused, just for a breath, then laughed. "She's all me, girl," and kept sorting. I remember standing there, holding a worn copy of Little Women, and feeling something drop in my stomach, like a thread had snapped. But no one noticed the sound. I wanted to ask. I almost did, so many times. But every time I got close, someone smiled. Someone laughed. Someone called me Auntie May, and I swallowed it down. Because what do you do when the betrayal is already done, and everyone around you is pretending it's love? You pretend too. The cruelest thing wasn't the secret. It was the way I had to keep showing up like nothing was broken. Set the table. Pass the rolls. Clap at school awards. Sing at birthdays. Smile. Even after the day Elena called him Dad by accident. She was maybe 10. She'd fallen off her bike. He picked her up, panicked. She was crying. And between sobs, she said, "Daddy," then stopped, looked at me, and looked away. He said nothing. I said nothing. Teresa wasn't there. That night, I stood in the kitchen and washed dishes until my hands went numb. He came in, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're the heart of this family." I dried my hands and nodded. I said, "You're tired. Get some rest." But I wasn't the heart. I wasn't even in the story. Sometimes betrayal doesn't shatter you. It erases you. Slowly. Quietly. In the way people look past you. In the way they say thank you, without really seeing you. In the way no one ever says, "This must be hard for you." Sometimes it calls you Auntie, and you smile back. Because if you stop smiling, Everything unravels. There's a different kind of pain when you're not cut out of a story, but slowly faded from it. When everyone keeps smiling like you're still in the center, while quietly moving you to the edge. I used to think pain came loud, but mine came dressed in Sunday quiets, in folding napkins, in the sound of a kettle boiling, while they laughed, in another room. One afternoon, I made Elena's favorite soup. Teresa was out of town, and she had stayed the night. My husband sat with her at the kitchen table. They were laughing over an inside joke, one I hadn't heard before. She leaned into him, and he touched her hand without thinking. Light, natural, too natural. I watched them from the stove. I was right there, but I wasn't in it. I was seasoning their memory. I dropped the spoon. The clang wasn't loud, but it stopped them. He looked at me. Just a flicker. Then he said, "You okay?" I smiled. "Just tired." That night, I took the old photo frame off the shelf, the one from the picnic. I stared at it again. I was still there. Yes, but not centered, not seen. I placed it face down. There were moments I wanted to reclaim space. Not out of vengeance, just survival. I once found Elena's old drawing tucked into a drawer. A picture of her family. 3 people. Her, Teresa, and him. I was nowhere on the page. I sat down and wrote a letter that night. Not to her, not to him, to the version of myself who used to believe she was someone's only. I wrote, "You are still here, even if no one draws you." I didn't sign it, just folded it and tucked it under the box of tea bags, where no one would think to look. Pain, when stretched across years, becomes a rhythm. I learned to breathe through it. I stitched it into Halloween costumes, stirred it into stew. I smiled at jokes that used to make me laugh. I clapped at Elena's school recital when she looked straight past me toward him. And sometimes I imagined flipping the table, but I never did. Once, she fell asleep on our couch. I walked over to cover her. Her head tilted just like his. Her breathing matched his patterns. I pulled the blanket up to her shoulder and whispered, "You are so loved. Not by me, through me, from someone else." And yet, part of me wanted to say, "By me too. Let me have that. At least." There was a night she came into the kitchen. Tired, teary, a fight with a friend. I poured her warm milk. She sat silent, then looked up and asked, "Do you think some people just always feel like visitors, even in the place they've lived all their life?" I should have answered something wise, something healing, but all I said was, "Yes," and I meant both of us. When I tried to write it out later, my hand shook. The page remained blank for 10 minutes. Then I wrote one line, "I miss being chosen," and folded the paper without rereading it. Somewhere along the way, Teresa stopped explaining things, stopped asking me for advice. But she kept hugging me at church, saying, "You're a blessing to this family." I wanted to say, "Which family?" I wanted to scream, "Do you even see me anymore?" But instead, I kissed her cheek, said, "Always happy to help." Because by then, pain had taught me this. The cost of saying everything is losing what little you still get to keep. I was wiping the glass on an old picture frame when it slipped in my hands. Nothing broke, but something inside me shifted. I looked at the photo, like I was seeing it for the first time. It was from a community picnic years ago. My husband stood in the middle, arms around a line of laughing children. Elena was there, right beside him. Her smile always struck me as familiar. But that day, it hit different. The angle of her jaw, the slight tilt of her head, the way she leaned into him like she belonged there. It wasn't just warm, it was intimate, the kind of comfort that doesn't grow overnight. I tried to laugh it off, told myself I was being foolish. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out another photo, this time from our church Christmas party. Same look, same closeness. And again, that smile. I remembered little things. The summer Teresa stopped coming by. The year Elena spent more time at our house than her own. The time I walked into the kitchen, and my husband had his hand on her shoulder, both of them quiet, like the room had frozen, and I wasn't supposed to see. For a long time, I told myself stories. That he was just being kind. That she needed fatherly guidance. That I was imagining things. Until I wasn't. I found a slip of paper hidden behind the back of the photo frame. I only checked because the cardboard had come loose. It was old, yellowing. His handwriting. E. 1997. You'll always be her lighthouse. No name, no explanation. Just that. I sat there holding it. The edges soft, like it had been handled many times. My chest tightened, not from shock, but because I wasn't shocked. Not really. I remembered a time years ago when I almost asked him directly. I had been pacing the kitchen for hours, hands shaking, a folded letter in my pocket. But then Elena walked in with a birthday cake she had baked just for me. "Because you're my second mom," she said. I smiled. I cried later. And I let the letter sit in my drawer, unopened, unsent. I had wanted to confront him. Not to accuse, but to ask, why did you never tell me? Why did you let me love her without the truth between us? But each time the moment came, something stopped me. Her laugh. Her stories. The way she hugged me like I was a constant in her life. Maybe I didn't want to lose that. Maybe I didn't want to break her image of us. But I had still wanted to say something. To her. Once. I came close at her high school graduation. We stood alone for a moment. Near the stairs. She said, "Sometimes I feel like we're connected by something bigger than just friendship." I opened my mouth to answer, but my voice didn't come. And then she hugged me. Long, quiet, like she knew, or didn't need to. I spent years holding that truth like a stone in my pocket. Heavy, cold, but familiar. There were days I reached for it, ready to throw it, to let it fall where it may, and other days I clutched it tighter. Not to protect him, not even to protect her, but to protect the version of us that felt whole. I don't know when the stone turned to sand, but one morning, after she moved out, I reached into the drawer, and it wasn't there. I had stopped checking, without noticing. Last week, she came by. No reason, just brought soup. We talked about her new apartment. She laughed at her own messy attempts at cooking, and then she handed me a small wrapped frame. "It's nothing big," she said. "Just a memory." It was a photo. From the same picnic. But this time, just me and her. She had cropped everyone else out. On the back, she'd written, "Some truths live in silence, but love always speaks." I held that frame long after she left. Not crying, not breaking, just quiet. I had spent years waiting for the right moment to say something. Turns out she said it first. Without naming names, without pointing fingers, she gave me the gift I didn't know I needed. She saw me, and she loved me. Not because I was the wife who stayed, but because I was the woman who did not walk away. That night, I placed her frame beside the old one, not to replace it, but to let both truths stand side by side. I sat with the photos for nearly an hour before I touched them. The old one, from the church picnic, sat on top, Elena in the center, him beside her, me at the edge, almost smiling, almost part of it. I held it up to the light, turned it slightly, then put it down. Beside it was the new one, just her and me, taken a few weeks ago in the backyard. She had laughed at something I said. It wasn't a big moment, but when I saw the print, I couldn't stop looking at it. There was no one else in that frame. No secrets. Just two women, across generations, tied by something deeper than name. I had the frame already, a two-sided one I'd bought years ago and never used. I wiped the dust off, set it on the table, then walked away, came back, stared. Was this too much? Or not enough? I wrote a note, then tore it up, wrote another, shorter. Then, finally, one line stayed. I may not be in your first picture, but I hope I'm still in your heart. I folded it once. No name, no signature, just paper. Paper and a quiet weight I'd been carrying for far too long. I slid it between the two photos. On one side, the version of history everyone remembered. On the other, the one I wished she would. I wrapped the frame in soft cloth. No ribbon, no fanfare, just stillness. She was moving out that weekend. A new apartment. Her first space alone. I brought soup, towels, and the box. She greeted me with her usual hug. Warm, uncomplicated, like none of the silence had shape. You didn't have to bring anything, she smiled. I know, I said, but I wanted to. She held the box, weighed it in her hands. Is it fragile? A little, I said, but not if you handle it right. She didn't open it, not then, just set it gently on the counter and offered me tea. We talked about curtain rods and groceries and missing socks. Then I stood to leave. Thank you for always showing up, she said, eyes soft. Even when I didn't know I needed you, I looked at her. And for a moment, I thought she might ask something. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She reached for a mug instead. I smiled. Take care of yourself. Then, that night, after I got home, I washed the dishes with the porch light off. I didn't check my phone. Didn't wait. But the next morning, I found a message. Just a photo of the frame, turned halfway, so both images could be seen. No words, just that, and a small red heart. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then set the phone down. Quiet justice isn't about being seen. It's about placing something in someone's hands that one day, without warning, might make them stop and wonder why you never knocked louder. The frame sat still on the shelf, catching a thread of afternoon light. I passed it, like I had for weeks, but this time I stopped, turned it slightly. One side still held the picnic, her in the middle, him beside her, me, smiling from the edge. The other side, the new one, just us. Elena and me, sharing space that no one gave us, but we took anyway. I adjusted it, not to show one side over the other, just enough so they both caught the light equally. Later that day, I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. The old letters were still there, the ones I wrote, but never sent. I took the top one out, didn't unfold it. I didn't need to remember the words. I remembered the weight. I held it for a moment, then folded it tighter, slipped it into a small box I hadn't touched in years. Not to throw away, just to place somewhere I wouldn't reach for again. There's something powerful about choosing what to keep and where to keep it. I made tea, not for anyone else, just for me. Cinnamon, a touch of milk, the way I liked it, before I started adjusting for other people's taste. I sat by the window. It had rained earlier. The air smelled like wet stone and cut grass. A bird landed on the fence, shook its feathers, then flew off. No music, no voices, just the clock ticking in the hallway, the soft creak of the kettle cooling. Then a small envelope slid through the mail slot. No name, just my address in familiar handwriting. Inside was a note. 3 words, written in ink I recognized. I see you. That was it. No photo, no explanation. I placed it on the table beside my cup. Didn't move it. Didn't reread it. Instead, I stood, walked to the hallway, and reached up to the top shelf. There was a photo I'd hidden years ago. Me, laughing, really laughing, sand in my hair. Sun behind me. Before the wait. Before the pretending. I took it out, wiped the dust. I didn't put it on display. Not yet. It just let myself hold it. And for the first time in years, the ache behind my ribs didn't press forward. It didn't vanish, but it didn't tighten either. I sat back down, took a slow sip, and thought not about what I had lost, but what I had quietly chosen to keep. Some stories don't ask to be told. They sit quietly folded, unfinished between two panes of glass, like a name once written and softly wiped away. I was never in their pictures, but I was there. I packed the lunches, held the umbrella, lit the candles, and when it rained, I stood at the edge so they could stay dry. If you've ever been the one who stayed, even when no one remembered you were still standing, you're not alone. Your story might not hang on anyone's wall, but it still matters. If there's a memory you've never shared, a truth you carried in silence, I hope one day you place it gently where someone can find it, even if you never sign your name.